Wow. I love what you just said, that, in 2022, people are multitasking. Like, we're just kind of doing that. Sometimes you even have to do that. You're on your phone and you're on your watch and you're on your computer and like maybe you're talking to somebody too. And, we're parents. And if you're raising a parent, you're with your kid as well. And, the whole 9 yards. As much as possible tonight, don't do that. You'll get way more out of the evening the more here you are. And that's one of the reasons we recommend having your videos on. It's not just because we like to see you. We do like to see you, but it's also because you'll get more out of the evening. People tend to engage differently and even behave differently when they're seen, but also when there's a single focus. We're going to talk some about that. And in 2022, that's a really big deal. That is, like it's kind of a simple thing to say, but it's actually a really big deal being able to concentrate. Alicia started teaching this work about 20 years ago. I started about 30 years ago. And you didn't kind of have to worry too much about concentrating on what you were doing back then. But nowadays, it's a super big deal. So anyway, what are we doing tonight? And then who are we?
Yes. Well, first of all, hey, Mastery of Relationship. Great to see you again. And for those of you that have never met us, or maybe this is your first or second time here, I'm Alicia.
I'm Erwan.
And those of you who are new, you are here visiting a session of Mastery of Relationship, which is our weekly group online experience. So welcome. We are going to dive into key attraction and seduction skills for dating and relationship. So whether you're single or you're in a relationship or you're somewhere in between, because there's so many places we can be on that spectrum in 2022, right? We've got some amazing skills for you.
Now, the way Alicia's talking, she's vibrating, she's going for it, she's there, she's with us, that's attractive. And that's not one of the 5 keys we're listing tonight, but it might as well be. You can, on your notepad, you can note that, like, going for it and engaging is very attractive.
So in a couple of minutes, we're going to guide you through a meditation for about 15 minutes to really get grounded and open up our space to take in everything we're going to be covering tonight. And then for those of you that are new, I'm going to offer you a really cool opportunity I think you're going to be excited about. We are going to do some exercises, some writing. You'll get to share with some of the people that are in the class. We'll do some Q&A, and we will end between 8:45 and 9 Pacific time. Now, I know that some of you came here already knowing that you're interested in working with us. You may like to set up a private time to talk to me. So in the chat is our school's phone number. That's the number to text to set that up. Some of you have already done that before the class even started.
You're going to leave tonight with a list of 5 things that if you do them, they will transform your life and they'll transform your relationship life, whether you're in a relationship or not. And you can they're the kind of things that you can kind of actually do during the class. So you can kind of road test it as we're rolling here tonight.
Now, Erwan made some very good points about the multitasking thing, so I'm going to reiterate it by simply saying, I invite you to ignore everything else for the next hour and a half, however long we're going to be together. I think it's an hour and a half or so. Ignore everything else. Let's be together. Okay, so Mastery of Relationship. Last week, we dove into romantic rackets. Remember that? That was interesting. And your activity from last week was inquire into the romantic games that you play. In other words, investigate where you are inauthentic in relationship with people, especially romantic partners of any type. What do you gain from that? And don't judge yourself for any of that. You
could call that funny business, right? So for those of you who are new, like people engage in funny business in life, and this is actually the language we use when we're talking to our 5-year-old, but it's kind of good language because it communicates. And in relationships, people do a lot of funny business. I'm going to read a paragraph from last week's session that'll kind of bring those of us in Mastery of Relationship back to that. And those of you who are new, you might inhale through osmosis the whole session in this paragraph, okay? Basically, a game or a romantic game or romantic racket is an inauthentic interaction with someone. One's real objective is hidden. For example, one may be acting extra nice, but the real goal might be to pull the other person in and then reject them and feel superior to them, right? I know for some of you there's a little like light bulb going off like, oh, wait, I do that. Or, maybe you do something different, or the opposite. Someone might be acting hostilely, like aggressively towards someone with the real objective of feeling inferior. Okay? So there's a lot to that. It's a short paragraph. For those of us who are new, if that made sense, great. For those of us who were here last week, hopefully that brings you back to it. But that's what we've been working on. And we got so much positive feedback on that session that we're going to continue with that in a couple of weeks when we do Predict Your Romantic Future. We're going to do a session in Mastery of Relationship, Predict Your Romantic Future, to discover the romantic script that you're living in and to rewrite it. Okay, so that's all about the games that we play and the programming and the funny business, and it leads to a kind of script, and we're, puppets acting something out. What are we acting out? Where did it came from? Is it inauthentic? Is it not? What's going on? And one of the cool things about that session is you'll actually be able to see where you're headed, right? And maybe it's where you want to be, or maybe it's not. That'll all get uncovered. Anyway, that's a tangent from where we're going tonight. Tonight we're going into something very fun, very sexy, attraction and seduction.
So we're going to give you some really great tips and tricks tonight for dating and relationship. And as you can see from what Erwan just shared about how our unconscious psychological patterns can sometimes drive our romantic lives, being successful in your romantic life is not all about tips and tricks, right? It's not all about this. Okay, pretend I'm the guy, okay? Like,
you're the guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, look at that. Look over there.
Oh,
I picked you up.
Look
baby.
at the alligator.
Right? And this is why in our 25 years of supporting over 14,000 singles and couples, we have learned there are 5 very important keys to having a successful romantic life, and that is the 5 parts of the Davon Method. So the first part of our method, as an overview of how we teach, for those of you that are new, the first part is bringing consciousness to your hidden relationship patterns. So you can see where you're headed if you continue to act unconsciously, and then you have a choice to learn new skills.
So consciousness of your relationship patterns.
Second part of the method is contact, making deep contact with yourself, who you really are beyond these patterns, and learning to live in your relationship life from there, from presence. Like
your real self, your authentic self, who you really are. No games, no rackets, no funny business. If you're into spirituality, your Buddha nature, or if you're more of a scientist, your consciousness, who you are fundamentally.
The third part of our method is chemistry, which is something we are going to be focusing on tonight. How to have that juicy interplay between the masculine and the feminine. How to do that deliberately, not just rely on that new, novel relationship energy, but how to bring that chemistry into the relationship over time.
And a big part of that we've already covered, which is showing up, right? Like showing up, being out there, being seen. Some of you are with your kids and all that, and, that's fine. I'm not, don't worry about that. But, really like showing up, really engaging, really being there, being findable, being locatable, taking risk. Tonight, we're going to talk about, and hopefully you'll learn, I think you will learn because we're going to make it very simple. How do you take the risk of seducing somebody, of attraction, of going for it with somebody, but minimize the risk, but really find out if they're interested? Okay, so tonight's topic is very much in this third part of our method.
The fourth part of our method we call choreography. Dancing through the stages of romantic relationship successfully, actually knowing, like having a roadmap of the different stages of relationship and the skills that go with them. Because let's face it, most of us have been flying blind most of our romantic lives, kind of following what we learned in high school or read in magazines or witnessed with our parents, right? We can go beyond that with these skills. The fifth part of our method is cultivation of your sexual potential. So that's not the focus tonight, but it's always worth mentioning. You don't want to leave out the sex.
I'll show everybody a sexy picture.
Yes.
Sure, why not, right? So that's our method. That's it in a nutshell. We're diving into the third part, which is like the chemistry, the attraction, the seduction. How does that work? It didn't work for me originally because my parents' relationship was such a nightmare. And I had to try and go through a lot of trial and error. And one of the things that I did is I made an offer to a woman every day, right? So far, we've talked about being on the court, showing up, etc. That was the one thing I did right. I did about everything else right. My girl I ended up dating at the time, what I called her? This is insulting. This is embarrassing. Insulting to me. I called her Yo. It was also insulting. I was like, Yo! Now, we're close friends with her now, Phoebe. She's like family for us. But back then, I was like, Yo! I'm from New York. I was like, yeah. Like,
oh, my God.
And I can remember once her going, don't call me Yo! So, a lot of trial and error, but I went for it, and I really showed up, and that came from making an offer every day. Now, the other woman who sort of had to put up with me through this trial and error period, her name was Nikki, so Phoebe and Nikki, they really got me while I was learning all of that. And God, that's like 30 years ago. So tonight, I'm going to give you the juice of the key things I learned, and Alicia's going to give you the juice of the key things that she learned, so you don't have to do all of that trial and error. But you got to do something. You got to show up, right? So how much you implement what we talk about tonight, how much you engage, including tonight, including right now, that's how much you'll get out of these 5 keys.
When Erwan and I first got together, I was in graduate school. I was getting my master's in psychology, okay? And one thing about being in a psychology program, this is like me in my early 20s, and I lived in Berkeley, and I was in this program, right? One thing about being in a psychology program is that you are the subject of study. So everything that we were learning, it was all kind of being applied to us and our life. And I remember one day I was in the class and we were learning all about like the inner child and how to work with somebody's inner child. And we were accessing our own inner child and deep feelings and here's the cool thing about my school, right? So the chair, like the big guy in charge, Ray Greenleaf, he was like this, like in his 70s with this big crazy gray hair, and he was a rock drummer, and he would roam the halls and he would ask everybody, how is your process? how is your process? He wanted to know personally what was going on with us. So that day when I was learning about my inner child in my class, and I walked out of my classroom into the hall, and I was like feeling so like my inner child, and I felt alone and emotional. And then Ray roams on up to me. He's like, Alicia, how's your process? I'm like, my process is my inner child, and I just feel so, and I just broke down in the hallway crying. And then all of my classmates like come around me, and they're like, oh, in the hallway. And Ray's like, bring it in, guys, group hug. And everybody's like holding me as I'm crying. And then he's like, all right, time to go to class. And everybody goes. That is how my graduate school was. Now, looking back on that, it's a little kind of funny and bizarre, but something we take from that is the personal connection with you guys. I was in a school, not in a 1,000-person lecture hall where there's somebody just, showing slides and we never meet the teacher. The chair was roaming around the hall asking us about our process. That's how we like to work with you, personally, holding your hand through creating the relationship of your dreams.
And so you'll know a little bit more about us. If you're new, we both have advanced psychology degrees. We've taken about every workshop on the planet. Alicia studied female sexual psychology. I lived in a Zen ashram, a Zen monastery, a yoga ashram after that, was director of the yoga ashram. So we've done all the stuff to really learn about being a human being and being happy and being present and being awake, and taught that stuff. And then we decided that we really wanted to focus it on romance and relationship, simply because for us, that's where the most juice was. So that's enough about us. Now, what I want to get to at this point in the class is maybe the most important part of the class, which is, what do you want out of tonight? Maybe you're in Master of Relationship and you're in the middle of your process here with us. Maybe you're new, however it goes. But something got you here tonight. There's some kind of itch you want scratched. There's something you want to learn. There's something you want to open up for you. So please take out your pen and paper and write down what you'd like to get out of tonight. And don't be afraid to reach for the stars, okay? Something that could really open up for you, right? But it has to be something that you really want. It has to be something that really speaks to you. It might be, I'd like to learn how to attract the partner of my dreams. Or I'd like to experience my husband or my wife as the partner of my dreams. Or I'd like to learn about flirting and be at ease with flirting, or understand what flirting is and how to do it. Or I'd like to know what holds me back, or, whatever it is. Wherever you're at in your process, there's something that got you here tonight. You're writing this down. This is just for you, okay? But if you have something at stake, right? Like if we were playing poker, if you had something at stake, like something in the pot, then you're going to get more, because then it's not theoretical, right? We've already talked about not multitasking, being on video, engaging, your full attention, all the rest of that. We're taking it to the next level. The specifics about your life and what you want, and having something at stake tonight so that it's not theoretical. And again, the session will be multiplied by however big the thing is that you have at stake. We're talking about your real love life and your real sex life, right? So take a moment. We're just going to take about 60 seconds for this. Nobody else is going to read it. You can write shorthand. But put something in the pot for yourself. Your time is precious. Let it be personal. It's not a theoretical evening. You'll even notice as you're writing it and you're present to that, the evening will shift, right? road test it. Don't just believe me. Like, whatever you write down, however meaningful it is to you, your experience will change. This is also a big part of attraction and seduction in 2022. We could call it being real. It's easy to hide out nowadays. There's the pandemic, and there's Zoom, and there's this, and there's that, and it's just kind of easy to sort of disappear. So instead of doing that, be real. Be real first with yourself. And then from there with everybody else, with us. All right, so I'm going to sort of blend this into the guided meditation. You're welcome to continue writing. This guided meditation is going to be short, and it's all about being present. That's the cornerstone of our work, right? Like you showing up, you being real, you being present. And that starts with your body. It doesn't end with your body. You're more than your body, obviously. But let yourself get comfortable, and let yourself also sit in a way where your body is upright. The comfort and the relaxation will help you be present. But the uprightness will also help you be present and also help you be alert and aware. When I lived in a Zen monastery, if we weren't sitting upright, they would literally hit us with a stick. Now, we're not going to do that. We can't do that. We're on Zoom, and I don't want to do that anyway. But, it's actually important to be upright. It opens the heart, the chest. The head center is lifted, so the head center is open, helps being open-minded. The chest is open, greater feeling, greater open-heartedness, greater sensitivity. The uprightness or erectness of the posture, if you'll permit me to say it that way, supports alertness, body sensitivity. You feel more sensation. And it also gives you something to concentrate on, and the mind, the overactive mind, the multitasking mind, just sort of winds down. You get more present to your experience. And it's fine if it's happy or unhappy or neutral, or your body's in pain or your body's blissed out or something in between. It's really all fine. But really feel your body, and that makes it easier to feel your heart. In psychology land, we call that your affect, your sort of emotional tone. Maybe it's love, maybe it's hate, maybe it's guilt, maybe it's excitement. Maybe you can't find your heart. That's fine. You're just open to that dimension of yourself, whatever you find or don't find there. Very important for attraction. Your heart is key, just as important as your body. It's fine if it's a sad heart or a joyful heart. There's also the mind, often associated with the head center. Let the head be relaxed. When I was director of the yoga ashram, I taught countless yoga classes, hatha yoga, physical yoga. And, in almost all the postures, the head center is relaxed. Relax your skull, your hairline, your jaw, your eyes. Notice that relaxes your brain. And notice that with that relaxed head center, you don't have to reach out to understand something. You don't have to reach out to the music or my words. You don't have to try to feel things or see things. They just come to you. You see and understand much more clearly with a relaxed head. Maybe your heart likes or doesn't like the things that you see or understand, that's fine. But it is easier to perceive and understand if the head center is relaxed. So you have a sensitive body, a feeling heart, a relaxed mind. And of course, tonight's about attraction and seduction. We don't want to leave out the sex center. So let yourself feel your sex center. Maybe you feel turned on. Maybe you feel turned off. Maybe feels achy. Maybe it feels pleasant, excited, or unpleasant, or cold, or hot. But let yourself feel your groin, your sacrum, the buttocks, the lower torso, the pelvis, the genitals. They're very important for attraction and seduction. And then issues arise, right? I'm talking about feeling our sex center. Well, maybe that brings up some issues. That's fine. Let the issues arise, or maybe the issues come up when you feel your heart, or relax your mind, or sense your body. Just have room for your issues. It's fine. Maybe you feel superior or inferior, or I like this, or I don't like this, or there's disengagement or judgment, or just all the human issues, right? That's fine. It's okay. Just notice them, feel them in the body and the heart and so on. Understand them in the mind. You are more than your issues. You're bigger than your issues. It's okay to have them. Everybody's got them. You'll get to explore some of them tonight, especially as they relate to attraction and seduction. There's two ways of dealing with issues. We're going to learn about that tonight as well. One is the immediate way. That's what I learned in the Zen monastery. You sort of transcend the issues because your consciousness is so much bigger than the issues. You are infinitely larger than the issue. The issue is like a tiny little speck, and you're like an infinite horizon of consciousness, of awareness, of presence. So it's easy to just kind of get off it, or the issue doesn't bother you. And then the other way that I learned in psychology school, many years of studying psychology at the University of California, you sort of work out the issues. You go through your process like Alicia described. You feel things and you work through them, and that's equally important. We'll do some of that tonight too. Attraction and seduction brings up issues that need to be worked out. But to wind down our meditation, I want to say that what's in the middle of all of that is you, right? Your presence, your being, your body, your soul, your mind, your heart, your sex, your issues, all of it. And just take a breath and notice your presence, and know that Alicia and Mai's experience of you is that you're perfect, exactly how you are. How your body is and your issues and this and that and all the rest of it. And we're not particularly religious, but, I'll say it this way. God doesn't make any mistakes. There's not anything wrong going on over there. Right? So just take a moment and feel your presence as your eyes open. All of you is welcome here. And all of you is required for attraction and seduction. In fact, as we said earlier, the more of you that's available, the more attractive you are. Showing up is, probably the biggest part of it, actually. That can feel very risky, right? Now, the first key, right, now that we're present and we're here and we're feeling and all of us is welcome, I want to say something about 2022, which is there's a lot of technology. And our first key is use technology, don't have it use you. The technology is there for you. You're not there for Zoom. You're not there for the app. You're not there for Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or Microsoft Word or whatever. You're not there for any of the technology. The technology is there for you. So how you do that is you stay in your body, in your life, present to the things that matter to you. You stay with yourself instead of getting lost in some kind of cyber world, right? Stay with, in this case, tonight, what's at stake for you, right? Stay with your heart. Don't multitask, etc., etc. Now, if you can't do that in a given situation, like tonight, sign off. If you're multitasking and this is kind of something off in the distance, just sign off. It'll actually do more damage than it would do good, right? You're for attraction and seduction, for learning anything, like, you want to be present. It's, let's talk about it relative to like dating and romance. You want to take the things that are going online and take them offline, right? Tonight, something's going on online, you're online, but you want to take it offline into your body, into your experience. You also want to take the skills into your relationship if you're with a partner or your dating life. One of the things that Alicia and I do, just kind of an easy example of this, is we throw a lot of parties. We're throwing a cocktail party in, when is our next cocktail party? June 18th, right? So, we use technology to support our real relationship, or getting together with friends and throwing a cocktail party. All of you are invited, whether you're new here tonight or in Mastery of Relationship, you're invited. Some of you live in Australia and far away, it's fine. You're still invited if you want to come. We've had people come from very far for the parties. But the point number one is use technology, don't have it use you. Okay, that's the first tip for 2022, and it's a very, very, it's kind of a boring, mundane thing to say, but it's actually very important to keep your eye on that. Now, let's talk a little bit about time in 2022. Let's start with those of us who are single. Attraction and seduction, right? Or getting into dating, right? It's a part-time job. You know, it really requires, I would, at a minimum, 5 to 10 hours per week of engagement to be successful at it. When I did it 30 years ago, obviously it wasn't 2022, but I put about 20 hours, I put a real part-time job, like 20 hours a week into it. And there's a lot more failure than there is success in dating. Now, I'm not saying it's not fun. I'm not saying it's not exciting. It is, and it can be, and it can also be heartbreaking. It can be a lot of things. But usually you have to date. Some people say 20 people. Some people say 60 people. Some people say 40 people. You have to date a large number of people. There's more failure than there is success, at least in terms of numbers, before you find a person that you're going to get into a relationship with. And at the end of the evenings, after I would go out and make an offer to a woman and, would you like to go for coffee or whatever, sometimes I was just destroyed. Here's this was when I first moved to San Francisco. At the end of an evening, my friend, sometimes I would go out with friends and to do this, to engage and, try to get into a relationship. And sometimes I was just destroyed. And this was an interesting evening. I went out and ended up at this party. And there was 3 women that I was interested in, and it was me and the 3 of them, and we were having a conversation, and I was interested in all of them, and I really didn't know what to do. And they were basically talking about me in front of my face, kind of sort of teasing me, and I was like the soccer ball and they were like the soccer players, and I didn't end up dating any of them, and I was kind of destroyed. But I learned a lot about women. One of the things I learned is, Jesus Christ, they play really fast, and that was a really good thing to learn as a guy. Boy, women are really fast in terms of relating and, what's going on. But for those of us who are single, the next key, the second key is, it really is a part-time job, and there's more failure than there is success. Put in the time.
I remember when I lived in Berkeley, and this is before I met Erwan, and I was in my really early 20s, and I really wanted to meet a guy, right? And my scene at that time was this kind of jazz funk jam band music situation. So multiple times a week, I was at these late night shows and dancing, and I had a thing for musicians. So I really liked to go to the shows, and then I liked to go to the after parties with my friends. And I was really hoping to meet a musician, right? So here's what I first did that didn't work. I would get to the after party, and the band wouldn't be there yet. They'd still be packing up all their gear. So I would just kind of wait by the door for them to come in. And I'd be hanging out by the entrance, and then they'd come in, and I'd be like, hi. And they were friendly, hello, but they would walk right past me, to get settled into the party and grab a drink and that kind of thing. So that was not working. But I was determined, right? I was willing to put in the time and learn how to do it. So I thought, well, I'm going to catch them on their way out. They'll be done with the party. They won't be distracted. So I would stand by the exit and hang out when I saw them getting ready to leave. And they'd be walking out and they'd be like, good night, and just walk out. I'm like, damn, these cute musicians, and I keep missing them. What am I doing? I kept experimenting. So one night this was kind of like a happy accident that turned into a very important piece of research that I think you'll find useful also, is I was at an after party, kind of standing around by the drink table and and the band walks in, and I see the bass guitarist, and he's poured himself a drink and this, and then he turns to walk away from the drink table with his full drink, and I said, hey, great show. And he's like, hey, thanks, cheers. And we had a whole conversation, and long story short, he did become my boyfriend, and I got to be his dancing in the front for a bunch of months until the relationship fell apart. But my point is, I learned the good place to be if you're at a bar or you're at a house party and you want to meet people, hang out around where people are getting their drinks. And when they've gotten them and they turn to go out towards the party, they're ready to socialize. That's a tip. But my more important point is that I put the time in, I tried, I experimented, and that's what works.
Now that's a great tip. If you're going out and you're single, be by the food, or be by the drinks, or be by the host of the party. Position yourself in a way so that you can really meet people. And, to do that, you actually really have to put in the time, which is our second tip. Really, put the time in. The biggest mistake we find people making nowadays who are single and want to get into a relationship is they ain't putting in the time. You got to put in the time, and you got to socialize. You got to get out there. Now, for those of us who are in a relationship, it's not a part-time job per se, but it's still a part-time pleasure. Let's call it a part-time pleasure. You really need at least 5 to 10 hours, hopefully 20, but at least 5 to 10, where you're engaging with your partner purely for pleasure, right? Just for the sake of being with them. You didn't get with somebody to just, get a tax break, or, handle the logistics of life, or, live with somebody so your rent is cheaper or something like that. You got with somebody to really enjoy them. It's a mistake we find people who are in relationships making in 2022 is not having the time for each other. And that time for each other is probably a lot more important than some other things that are being done, right? That you might be doing if you're in a relationship. So one of the ways that you can spend that time, Alicia and I have a touching practice. We do it every day. This is a video. Most of you in Master of Relationship have seen this video. And if you haven't, we're not going to watch the video, but we're going to scan through it in kind of sort of a fast motion here, right? Alicia's going to turn this into a sexy reading. All right, I like that little. But you see, having a touching practice, right? There's all kinds of ways to touch somebody and feel your hands and feel them, and it doesn't need to be explicitly sexual. But we have a touching practice that we do every day, okay? And again, those of you who are in Mastery of Relationship, you've seen that video. If you haven't, we recommend you watch it, like the core practices in our class or in that whole members area with all the videos and audio recordings and all the rest of that, okay? So carve out time if you're in a relationship to really spend with your partner and enjoy it. Now, it can obviously be sexual. Most of our touching practices become sexual. We do them every day. They usually become sexual. The phrase we have for it is doing, deliberate orgasm, way beyond the scope of this class. Obviously, doing that is great. It's fantastic. The touching practices can develop into that. I'm not going to go into that in depth. You could go to some kind of crazy extreme like us. We do demonstrations of extended orgasm. But you don't have to do that. The important point is if you're in a relationship, spend time with your partner, right? You do want to go out. You do want to have time to enjoy them. That's not about taking care of the kids. It's not about work. It's not about some logistic or, shopping or anything like that. That's really just having a good time. Something probably has to get cut out to do that. So we're going to do a little writing now. And the writing is, what do you need to cut out? Or what could you cut out? Or what are you doing, if you're single, that's less important than the 5 to 10 or even 20 if you want to be extreme about it, but let's say 5 to 10. What are you doing that's less important than meeting somebody? And if you're in a relationship, what are you doing that's less important than spending time with your partner?
So just list whatever comes to mind.
We'll take just about a minute or two for this. Just brainstorm, write shorthand.
So you're writing, what are you doing with your time day to day that's less important than really nurturing your relationship or your dating life?
And it might even be stuff that's less fun. Like, God, I really don't need to be doing that. I'd be way better off, like, going to some meetup or event or something like that and meeting somebody, or going out to dinner and drinks with my partner. All right, you can just wind that down. You're obviously welcome to keep adding to that list if you think of new things throughout the... You can wind that down. You're obviously welcome to add to that list if you think of new things throughout the evening. In fact, there'll be a talking exercise you'll do in small groups where you'll have an opportunity to focus on that or one of the other keys. But we're going to go to the next one. So the second one is put in the time. If you're making a list, the first one is use technology, don't have it use you. The second one is put in the time. Okay, especially in 2022, you really need to do that. Folks are distracted. The third tip is, and this is a really fun one, flirting. Right? Do it. People don't flirt with their partners, and they want to meet somebody and they don't flirt, or they don't even know what flirting is. Like, well, you got to flirt, you got to do it. And we're going to give you the essence of flirting now, and we're going to give you a way of doing it that makes it very low risk. One of the reasons people don't flirt is like, it just feels really risky to put like your sex vibe out there and see how somebody responds and that kind of thing. Well, how do you do it with no risk? How do you do it in a way where there's very little investment, but you get the equivalent of a text bubble above their head, whether you're at a bar or a party or online or whatever, that tells you if they're interested in you, okay? We call that qualifying a person or forcing a reaction. Now, that to really show you that well, it involves a little bit of like, acting and playing it out and all the rest of that. So we're going to show you a 3-minute video of a public event that we did pre-pandemic, where we're actually sort of demonstrating that. We think that's the best way to have you get it. For those of you who are in Master of Relationship, you have access to this whole hour-long session about this. But we're going to give you this really critical part for flirting right now. How you do it is you interact with the person that you're interested in a way that forces them to react to you. You interact with them in a way that forces them to react to you. And you get a very quick read if they're interested, right? I'm at a party, I don't know this beautiful woman here, I'm walking by, I go, hi. Hey. Is she interested? Mm-hmm. Yes, she is. She is interested. All right. That's interesting. All right? Women are usually not like, yeah, oh my God. Guys are like, yeah. So, as you go and you do this tiny little investment, hi, is she interested? No. But sometimes you can't get a read, right? Hi. Hey. Right, so what do? Go again, of course. Do it again, right? Hey. Hey. Oh, complex. Now there's interest and disinterest and turn on and anger and like 6 things going on. So you respond to that, wow, you are complex.
Thank you.
Mind me can you explain this to me?
Thank you. I wasn't seen.
All right, well, great. All right. Explain what just happened. If you're a guy, it's a good idea to ask a woman to explain things. Right? This is a wise and rarely used move.
So what's really great about what Erwan did was, like he said, it was very low investment. You know, he didn't come over and be like, "Hi," and like sit down and like, "Let me buy you a drink." And then if I have some kind of cold response, he's kind of trapped on the stool, isn't he? So he didn't put himself in that position, but he was friendly, he was direct. Hey, then when he wasn't quite sure where I was at, he asked again, he said something charming. You know, it's very little investment. This works in relationship too, by the way. This is like critical for when you're single and you're kind of like at a party or at a bar or at a coffee shop and you're kind of like, I like this person, how am I going to find out? It works equally well when you're with your relationship partner. I mean, sometimes Erwan will be in one part of the house and I'm in another part of the house and I'll start to feel like, God, I want to like have some fun right now. Where's Erwan? And then I'll go and maybe he's on his computer and I'll just be like, hey. I haven't jumped into his lap and like needed him to receive me. It's a friendly, and in that case, and as usual, he responded. Oh, okay, good. I can get a little closer. But sometimes we don't even try because we're afraid of rejection. So this is like the way to combat that.
It's very minimal investment. I like that. Afraid of, we're usually afraid of rejection.
Yes.
So you really have the essence of flirting right there, what we call micro gestures, small gestures. But it needs to be big enough that it forces them to react to you so you know if they're interested or not. That's why we sometimes call it forcing a reaction. Okay? So you're looking to make the smallest investment you can that gives you the equivalent of a text bubble above their head to find out if they're interested. Could be a little touch, could be like, hey, how you doing?
From the feminine perspective, could really just be a smile, and you look half a second longer than usual, and then you look away. Trust me, if he's interested and paying attention, he will come your way.
Alicia just did that, and I'm definitely going her way. So what we'd like you to write now is, what are your strong points and weak points in flirting? In making those little micro gestures that turn a relationship on, but that are big enough that you find out if the other person's interested. All right, for example, maybe one of your strong points is you do flirt a lot, but maybe a weak point is you don't make enough of a gesture to find out if they're interested, so you kind of never know. You're like kind of putting it out there, but then you're shying away and you don't really know if they're interested. Or maybe a weak point is you just don't do it at all and you're staying home. Or, maybe a weak point is, you make such big overtures that if they don't accept, you're crushed, and then you don't start flirting again with your partner or somebody new, till 2026. So take a minute and jot down your strong points and your weak points in flirting. We're going to do questions later. If you have a question about flirting, it's a very big topic, one of our favorites. Jot down your question. We're going to go into questions later. And just get the gist of it down. You can obviously continue this list, but really confront, am I flirting? Am I not? Where am I strong at it? Where am I weak at it? You could almost say it is the skill of attraction and seduction. And again, you're welcome to keep adding to that list.
Those of you that are in mastery of relationship, most of your goals for mastery of relationship have to do with either getting into a relationship and successfully attracting and seducing the person, or those of you in a relationship having that chemistry and juice. So we're designing a larger series that we'll be teaching a little bit later this year, all about masculine feminine dynamics and flirting skills, and we're going to go into depth. I mean, some of you here have been in mastery of relationship long enough that you remember the seduction and flirting series that we did, 10 years ago. I'm thinking of Alex and how that was like the beginning of his marriage, Yeah. So that's coming up.
All right. Now, the next thing that we have to look at, we have to deal with our issues, right? So as a human being, we have issues. We talked about this in the guided meditation. You don't want to shy away from your issues. You want to delve into them. You want to deal with them, right? One of the things that I loved about Alicia is she had an advanced psychology degree. She was in therapy. She was dealing with her issues. So the fourth key is your issues, ... own and resolve them. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about that shortly, but what you want to write down is your issues, own them and resolve them. Don't shy away from them. And there's a couple of different ways that you can address your issues. We're going to talk about both.
So I'll give you an example using an issue of mine. So those of you in mastery of relationship, you'll remember my story last week when we were talking about romantic games and rackets that we have, and I was sharing all about mine, about I can't do this, you need to help me game that I would play, and I was with my ex James in the chocolate shop in Belgium. Remember that? So that issue that was coming up in romantic relationship over and over was something like constantly feeling frustrated, I can't handle this, I need help, you should help me. That's what was playing out in my relationships. Now, one really good way to deal with that, which I did, is over time with support, really working the issue. And I remember being in a session with Evelyn, who is our support person for our relationship and our spiritual development. And I was like, God, I just feel this way so often and so many different circumstances, and I don't know. And she asked me this question. She said, so who do you want to help you? Just who do you want to help you, Alicia?
That's such an Evelyn question.
I know.
It's a great question. I want to know, who do you want to help you?
Yes, and then the minute she asked that, this image popped into my mind of me sitting at my dining room table as a young child with my dad, and I was working on my homework. And I hit, part of my homework and I couldn't figure it out. And I said, I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. And then my dad, bless his heart, totally just trying to help, he'd be like, oh. And he took my workbook, took my pencil. He said, see, this is how you do it. And basically did it for me. So something in me unconsciously was like, ha, here's how I get things done. So then I developed a habit of I can't do this, help me, with my dad, right? Which he obliged, because that's just sort of what parents do, right? But I took that habit into my adult romantic relationships, probably not a great thing. And when that started to come up with Erwan, it didn't really work so well. He's not my dad. He wasn't like, oh, honey, I'll do your homework.
And I probably didn't know how to do it.
And so it was a problem. So really, when I got that, in this depth session, and I'm like, wow, when that frustration, that issue comes up, it's connected to my childhood. And I really understood that. That really opened something up for me.
And that's one way to work through issues, which is work the issue and really deal with it and, unpack it and so on.
So there's another way of dealing with the issue, which is accessible to you, which is simply choose something else. Immediate approach. Like the other day on Sunday, we were driving out to a different part of the city, out towards Dolores Park with our son, and we were going to have this beautiful day in the sun, and we needed to park, right? Parking is insane in that part of the city. So I pull up and I see this spot that's like just big enough, and I was going to need to parallel park into it, and I was like, and I started feeling that frustration and like he should help me with this. I can't do this. Inside my head, I'm thinking, and then I was about to snap at Erwan and be like, can you just handle this? But I noticed the frustration, like, there it is. There's my thing. And I just chose something else. The something else was not asking for help, but it was all about my vibe. I said, hey babe, would you hop out and just watch as I'm backing in? Because this is a really small space. He's like, absolutely. Got out of the car. And then our 5.5-year-old jumps out of the car too, because he's like, I'm going to tell you how to park, mama. And I'm like driving in, and he's like, I made it into the spot, just so you know. But my point is, I chose in that moment just to get off the thing of, and be an adult.
It's great. So there's two ways to work with your issues. One is you work the issue, you resolve it, you deal with the underlying thing. And the other way is you, as Alicia said, you just get off it. You just choose something else. That does require being present to the issue. One is the immediate approach, like the Zen approach, if you will, and the other one is the psychological approach. Both work, and both are necessary, actually, because sometimes, I remember when we were getting married, and there's, the woman, Joan, our close friend, officiating the thing, and there's guests and family members, and people have traveled from all over the world and all the rest of this kind of stuff, and, I have all kinds of feelings going on, but, I don't have time to work any issues in that moment, so just hey, I'm just going to love people and be great, and, sometimes you'd have to just get off any kind of anxiety or fear or anything like that. And then sometimes you can really work an issue. You're in context for that. And some of you are in individual coaching with us. We're unpacking things and, that kind of thing. So both are required. But the fourth key is your issues. Own them and resolve them. Don't neglect them. You do have to deal with them one way or another. So we're going to do a little writing about that, which is what issues tend to play out for you in romantic relationship. Right? What issues tend to play out for you in romantic relationship? The most important part, whether you take the unpacking it, resolving the issue, or the immediate approach, you have to kind of know the issue. You have to distinguish the issue. So the most important part of your issues, owning them and resolving them, is knowing what they are. So take a moment and jot down what issues tend to play out for you in relationship. I'll give you a tip, right? We're throwing tips in with these keys. Be humble about this. Own your issues. Be willing to see, I'm always giving in relationship, or I'm being aggressive, or I'm avoiding relationship, or I'm scared, or I'm self-conscious, or whatever it is, right? Or I'm kind of not sure I like sex, or, whatever it is, right? So just take a moment and write down what issues tend to play out for you in romantic relationship. Just doing that is half of resolving them. Just really write it out. It's kind of like journal writing. It's kind of like introspection. We could do not only a whole topic, but a whole series on these issues. But get a snapshot. Some of you wrote your issues in the chat. That's great. The more publicly personal we are, the better. You don't need to do that, but I just want to, I don't know, feel like a
champion that, right?
Champion that.
Yeah.
So a little extra credit for that.
Yeah.
All right, good. So we'll share the fifth key now. And the fifth key is very important for attraction because it's really the essence of attraction, which is to differentiate or diversify, right? We're going to explain what we mean by that. In a romantic relationship, the reason that two people are attracted to each other is because they're different. Often it's a woman and a man. It can be two men. It can be two women. But there is a difference. We could call that feminine and masculine. Again, whether it's a woman and a man or two women or two men, it doesn't really matter. But it's kind of like magnets. If you have two magnets, you'll notice that they stick together or they repel each other. And they stick together when you have the positive pole connected to the negative pole. It's actually the difference that brings them together for a whole. If you put the positive pole and the positive pole together, they actually repel each other. Okay? So whatever sex a person has biologically, it's really fine. It doesn't matter. But you do need to have a difference in, I know gender is like a big sort of hot topic nowadays, but I'm just going to use that word gender. You do need to have a difference in gender, in masculinity and femininity, because that's what the essence of a romantic relationship is. You want to have that difference. And, it looks many different ways, right? Like biologically, physically, if it's a woman and a man, it looks like she has an innie and he has an outie, right? So like there's a difference, right? It can be two women, two men, all the rest of that. I'm not going to go into the whole politically correct stuff, but it really is your preference is what your preference is, but you'll notice your preference is for a complementary quality. One way it can look between a feminine person and a masculine person is a feminine person, it's like, or let's start with the masculine actually. He finds out what does she want, right? I remember when I started going out with Alicia, I had my whole Microsoft Outlook contacts on my computer and all the rest of this kind of stuff. And, I started making a list of things that she wanted. She liked mixed tapes, right? If you remember tapes with all those songs on them, kind of mixed tapes. And she needed a set of kitchen knives. So I bought her a set of kitchen knives and I started making mixed tapes. So that's a great kind of masculine thing to do, or from that position. It's all, like the most brilliant thing in the world. But, finding out what she wants and then giving it to her. And then from the feminine perspective,
you want to express what it is you want. So that's the first step. Then when he pays attention to that and gives you that or delivers on that or gives you that experience, You want to consume it. You want to enjoy it. You want to have him know how much you love it and that he's your hero. And you really, like, there is no limit to how much you can bring that energy into your relationship life for the most simple things as well as the big grand gestures. You know, like the other day, the Sunday we drove across town to Dolores Park, another story about this, okay? So it was Mother's Day, right? So I wanted to spend the day with my boys. We're driving across town. I'm driving. And the plan was to go to Dolores Park Cafe and get coffee and then walk out into the park and find a spot and hang out. And I thought on the way, I'm like, ooh, Phil's Coffee is actually on the way to Dolores Park. Phil's Coffee, some of you totally know what I'm talking about. Some of you are like, what? Phil's Coffee is an iconic coffee spot in San Francisco and now other areas, and it's kind of like got a cult following. I'm part of that cult.
It's extremely, somehow they have managed to make that coffee like double caffeinated.
It's insane. So I think, so I said, I'm like, Phil's is on the way to Dolores Park as I'm driving. And Erwan says, is there not something at Dolores Park Cafe that you want? And then I'm like, well, I don't know. I guess I could get green tea or something. Obviously not excited to go to Dolores Park Cafe. And then he's like, if you want to go to Phil's, let's go to Phil's. And I'm like, I don't know, like the parking might be kind of hard. And like, as I'm talking, Erwan's punching into the GPS, like Phil's on Castro and like, go. He's like, babe, don't worry about it. Just go there. I'm like, okay. Thinking, God, he's really making this happen. We pull up to Phil's. There's no legal parking spots. I'm like, and he's like, pull into the yellow curb. Don't worry about it, babe. We're getting Phil's. I'm like, okay. So I pull in. We go into Phil's. I'm ordering my yerba mate with chai spices and almond milk thing that I really like. And he orders his coffee. He's running out to check the car to make sure we're not getting towed. He delivered on my desire in full. And I let him know that. I didn't just sip my tea, okay, cool, let's go to the park. I sipped it. I'm like, God, Phil's, there's nothing like it, babe. Thanks for making that happen. Yum. He had no doubt that I was thrilled that he made that happen. That's a nice masculine-feminine dynamic. So differentiating between the masculine and the feminine and really emphasizing the roles is a key attraction and seduction skill.
You know, in that case, she had the appetite and I got to be the hero. It can look a number of different ways. That's kind of like in the vibe and the romance and biologically the innie and the outie and all the rest of that. But there's differentiation, okay? Very important for attraction and seduction. We're going to do a little writing about that now, okay? So what we'd like you to write down, and this is kind of like a big thing to write down. You're going to get a lot out of this, answering this simple question, which is, what judgments do you have about your gender or the opposite gender? It's going to be a long question. That's just the first part. What judgments do you have about your gender or the opposite gender? Or differences between the genders? Right? What judgments do you have about your gender or the opposite gender or the differences between the genders? Very spicy topic nowadays, very charged topic, but something that really needs to be addressed for attraction and seduction, especially in 2022. Because you got a lot of people who are really fixed, like men are like this, women are like this, men have to be masculine, women, you got that whole thing. And then you got all these other people which are like, there's no gender, it doesn't exist, well, take a look for yourself. What judgments do you have about your gender or the opposite gender or the differences between the genders? And if you're confused about all that, what confusion or judgments do you have about gender in general? So if you're confused, about this, right? It's a, charged topic. People are often confused about it. What is that confusion? Or what judgments do you have about being confused? Or what judgments do you have about gender? I think you get the idea. It's very important to confront this issue of gender because attraction involves difference. It involves differentiation. So take a moment, jot down whatever comes up for you about that. It'll take a minute or two for that. It's a big inquiry. Attraction and seduction is, full of charge, sexual charge, right? But can also be full of judgment, right? It's a charged topic. We need to confront that. We need to look at it. What judgments do you have about your gender or the opposite gender, or confusion about it? So those are the 5 keys. Now we're going to put in a bonus key right now, right? It's kind of where we started actually, but it's probably the most important, which is to be in action. I think in Star Trek, Captain Picard, he says something about engage. I'm a fan of the original Star Trek with Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, but I think in the new one, I've seen it once or twice. He says, it's not new anymore. It's like 10 years old now. But he's like, engage, right? So being in action makes all the difference, especially in 2022, because it's very easy to not just be in one's head, but in one's head in some kind of cyber world. So you really want to be in action in your love life.